Finance Committee. Then we're going to board retreat after board morning. All right, shall we, no public comment? Let's start with the finance action items.
Yeah, we only have one action. We'll hopefully get you out of here in short order to get to your retreat. But the only action item we have this month is the purchasing agenda, and it's fairly brief. As you may remember, we had a purchasing agenda we brought directly to the board last week, I guess. Did some things done primarily on the construction side. So these are just some routine type of expenditures that for particular ongoing programs in the support area. So we would ask that this committee would move this to the board level for approval.
Anyone?
No.
Done? To the full board? So moved.
Support.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Now, next reports, William Safe and Dry.
The Warm Safe and Dry report's in your packet. The new report that we did last month, we did modify to have subtotals on it. It does help because you can see on there things like asbestos abatement, we've done roughly $900,000 worth, and I believe it was about $2 million of roofing work that we've done, which were two items that we talked about in the campaign. So if you have any other comments on those, just feed those back and we can modify all of those reports if there's a way to make them easier to follow. I know a number of you were at the ribbon cutting for the museum school last Thursday. That's 95% done. There's a few things to finish up yet, but we're ready to go. We have occupancy. And then the C.A. Frost Environmental Science Middle High School at Koval. The final inspections are today. They have orientation tomorrow. Their ribbon cutting will be Friday, September 9th. But that has a little bit more to do, but we should pass. We've been in touch with the inspectors. We expect to pass today and be ready to go tomorrow.
Great. So they have been doing orientation, the teachers have been prepping in another building?
The teachers came back for the Koval site Thursday. They had a training. Part of it was at Frost Park, and then later in the day, they were able to go over and move in. We had their materials moved in. The occupancy really addresses the students more than the adult staff, but they were able to get in Thursday, Friday, and potentially on the weekend to set up their classrooms.
Oh, great, good. Yeah, when you hear inspection, home
Well,
inspection, you can't get in, but you can get.
It's the final
Yes.
inspection.
Yeah,
We've
for the,
already had the trades inspections.
Right.
So it's just the final sign off by the building inspector and the fire marshal.
okay, wonderful. Nice work. That all done. Great. Anything else to out? Let's see here. All right, the bond update.
Not much to update, just the contracts for the architects, engineers, and construction managers was approved at the last board meeting. I've got meetings with all of them set up for Wednesday just to go over the scope and revisit the budget, or not the budget, the schedule, and emphasize the budget is a cap, not a estimate. We're going to work below that, not above it. And then just to get things rolling, we're going to have meetings with each team throughout Wednesday and get that started. And the other thing that we'll do is part of that scheduling, we'll identify where public input locations are, what needs to be done by the design teams first, when things should come to this committee and the board, and when we should have public input. So we'll be able to lay that out in a schedule and let you see that.
Nope.
Dr. Reynolds, just want to mention before we move on to policy that for your benefit, remind past board members and for Ms. Shatsky's benefit that normally, as you know, we bring monthly financial statements. We did not last month because our June and then fiscal year 16 financial statements will come via the financial audit, which will be completed around the end of October. Same with July. As we're closing out June, there are timing issues we're looking at that potentially impact the July financials, and we're just finishing all that up now. So next month we will bring both July financials and August financials, and then, as I mentioned, the audited financial statements for the whole fiscal year 16 will be available. This body will probably bring in the October Finance Committee meeting, so, or maybe even a special meeting, depending on timing wise. They're due to the state 15th, Ron, I keep forgetting. November 1st, yeah, they moved it up a month from prior years, so that's why there are no financials this month. Excuse me. Then the last item we have is a fund balance policy revision. We have talked about this off and on, really, maybe the past year or so. And so, what's included in your packet is what's titled a current version, and that's the fund balance policy as it stands currently. And then there's another page or 2 pages that have draft on it. And that would be, this is the draft, the new fund balance, proposed fund balance policy that I have drafted for your review and process. And really, the significant changes we talked about is to conform this to the state's current early warning criteria, which at this point is probably the critical measurement, since to get below the 5% computation would put us at risk of additional state involvement. And so the major change is I've kept the range because I still think it's appropriate that we try to build above the 5%. In fact, actually, the Michigan State Business Officials, School of Business Officials organization just came out last week, with their revised recommendation on fund balance, which they have it because of all the uncertainty in our environment, which has been around for a long, long time. They recommend a 15 to 20% fund balance. Now, I don't think it's not realistic for most districts given the lack of financing that we have. And secondly, I don't think it's necessarily appropriate for our district because we have, it's not responsible to build it that big given we have employee groups that, we haven't had regular compensation increases that we need to certainly take care of them. So I believe this 5 to 15% range is still appropriate, which was in the current fund balance policy. The difference is the old fund balance policy was computed based on a percent of expenditures, and this changes to look at total fund balance as a percentage of total unrestricted general fund revenue, which is the early warning computation. There was some extraneous, in my opinion, information, technical and matters surrounding that I eliminated too. And so what's before you would be my recommendation for a new board fund balance policy, and certainly entertain any questions you may have about that. I think if you approve it here, then it goes to the board for a first reading and comment, and after that approved. So questions, comments?
They seem to be both very, very much aligned. I was looking for the actual changes you made.
Yeah, the actual changes are really if you look at the draft, Dr. Flores, the second paragraph is most of the change, where we talk about a 5 to 10% with a goal of, or 5 to 15% with a goal of 10%. But the computation is annual unrestricted general fund operating revenues and total fund balance. If you look at the old policy, it's on expenditures. And I think we talk about general operating expenses exclusive of grants. So the definition, the computation has been changed to, as I said earlier, to conform to the early warning criteria. We've talked about that in several meetings throughout this past year, certainly. So And and at the end of the old policy, as you can see, there's a lot of other really technical issues surrounding fund balance that I don't believe is appropriate for a board policy. A lot of those things are required by the accounting standards anyway, so I've just eliminated those to really allow the board policy to focus on what's important in terms of the board and monitoring the fund balance level.
I feel like we need to add any language mentioning the early, or the emergency manager, the early warning specifically, or not, I don't know. People will bring it up. The other thing I thought was interesting, that your group that you belong to, that they would want 15 to 20%, we would have to, well, I suppose 15% would be we wouldn't have to change the policy, but it does seem extreme in terms of.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, my other career in public accounting, and I had a number of school district clients, and that's really, as external auditors, as the years went on, and especially after first several years of Proposal A, and we saw some potential funding deficits, and of course the state was in a 10-year recession. Many of the public accounting firms were recommending to their boards of education, to their clients, this 15 to 20%. The theory being more is better than less because of all the uncertainty in the funding. And, we were, as you know, fortunate to have a fund balance above 15%. I think the first year I came here, and then, the accumulated impact of reduced funding finally hit us, and we had to make some adjustments, obviously, to our compensation structures and everything else in mind. And although now we're getting some increases, as we've talked before, at budget time, it's barely enough to keep up with inflation in the last year or two. And so to ever get to 15 to 20% for most districts is probably a pipe dream. Very difficult for us. And we have other things to consider too as an inner city district and the challenges we have. So like I said, I think it's probably irresponsible to run around the 15% balance, and not, as an example, give increases to our employees. That just would not go over well with any of us, quite frankly. So, so to get to a 10%, it's certainly, that's a reasonable goal. But we just can't get below 5%. That's really the driving focus on this fund balance policy, is keep it above 5%. So.
To approve this, to move this to the
So,
full
board?
board? Support? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Yeses? And, let's see, looks
it.
like we're all set then. Should we
Good.
run over, meeting adjourned?
Thank you.
Thank
To
you.
the next place.